Hona Amaya here, and we are going to be breaking down one of the co-creation pieces to understand in how we are really moving through this world in our creation process here, as well as really understanding some of the fall mechanics that have been put into place specifically within the victim-victimizer programming, as this is going to be one of the, it has been, if you've been really doing your deep work for a while, it's been one of the core focus. That being said, it's going to become even more emphasized over the next several decades on the planet, really understanding how these programs have been put into place. So we're going to go through some of the mechanics, some of the storyline to how we even developed this victim-victimizer program to begin with, and as well as what the core creation code is truly representing. So I've brought my whiteboard here today so that we can break this down visually and really start to understand this fundamentally. So we're going to start with the beginning of our original innocence creation code, which is created through the Biveka. The Biveka code, with the top being virtue and the bottom being value. This Biveka code here is going to be representing our density 4, which is that dimensional consciousness of our avatar identity or our Rishi Krishtic identity, right? So that is going to be 10, 11, and 12 dimensions. So this is the most important thing, because returning to this, the pure innocence of living through virtue and value, this is going to be really the inner and the outer experience in the higher planes. When we're here, though, it flips around, and the value is what is unconsciously driving our motivations here, which we'll break down today in this call. And the virtue is what we can actively align ourselves with, seemingly in the external, to cultivate and ultimately free ourselves from the victim-victimizer programming, which we're going to talk about how that overlays. So as above, so below, and when it comes in, it flips. So even though we have the virtue in the higher planes here, in the outer domains, the value in the inner domains, we're going to see how this all plays out as we start to look at what happened almost 500 billion Earth years ago, which is a very long time to possibly conceive in our human story. And if you've watched any of my videos on some of the false light teachings, you will have seen me talk about certain things before that other people would deem as spiritual concepts or symbols or codes. And we are continuously here revealing the false mechanics of it. So what happened 480, roughly 500 billion with a B years ago, is we got imprinted with this also. We also know this as the Vesic Pisces code. A lot of people see this as a high spiritual symbol. It's actually a symbol of our deeper inner domain, slavery and servitude. So back 480 billion years ago, roughly, there was a group of beings, the Borantasalas, and they basically were in a parallel Akasha, so a parallel time matrix to the one that we are in, and they witnessed an organic fall. And in witnessing that, they basically wanted to figure out how and why it happened. They wanted to understand what the root cause was, what makes a system fall. And basically what we mean by that is it starts de-evolving instead of evolving in a natural ascension process. Because they wanted to improve upon whatever it was that happened in order to cause that organic fall, they created this experiment, essentially. That experiment is the victim-victimizer of this Vesica-Pisces code. So they flipped to distort the Biveka, flipped that code, and imprinted the victim-victimizer into the Biveka. When we do that, we get this symbol that many people know as the start of the flower of life. What's most important is that these angles here are 60 degrees. Now, I'm not using a compass right now, and I'm freehand drawing these, so don't, judge me by my drawing here. These may not be precise 60-degree angles. That being said, in the actual design of it, structurally, they create 60-degree angles. And what this created was the six victim-victimizer Vesica Pisces golden handcuff programming. Now, it's so important to understand that this is being overlaid into the density 4 avatar body, right? So this distortion goes up far more than just the third dimensional experience that we're having here of the material plane. And this karma trickles all the way up to our higher oversoul level identities. Now, breaking this down, because this has been overlaid into the original source code, several things happened. This was supposed to be just an experiment. And there was a group that took on this flipped Vesica Pisces code. And then there were two groups actually that took that on, and they came into basically extreme polarity, right? Where there's victims and abusers, right? And abusers have victims, victims have abusers, right? It goes back and forth, the extreme polarity. Two groups took that on, and one group stayed in the Tribeca, the original source code of density 5, which we'll just draw shortly up here so you can see that. Right, so this is going to be, right. So this is our Tribeca. Density 5. Right, this is dimensions 13 through 15. One group maintained the Tribeca code, and this is happening in the parallel Akasha to where we are. Akasha is basically a source field time matrices that downsteps creation. We are in an Akasha. There are many other Akashas happening. This program, the two groups that went into the control into the experiment, this is the control, this is the experiment, they ended up descending so far into this creation that eventually they were able to infiltrate and hijack the source code itself, which is why this experiment kind of went haywire and why it never ended and why it has now basically become like a virus that has spread through many different time matrices and many different Akashas at this point in time, and how we are now currently experiencing this distortion in our coding here in the matrix that we are in, the Akasha that we are in here on Earth. So, a few things to understand about this. Because this is really foundationally the deepest soul level spiritual initiation work that we're going to do here in our lifetime. For those of you who have watched some of my previous videos, we have been talking about, whether it's just by myself or with myself and Alex, we've been talking about a lot of the planetary Templar activations that have been taking place over the last several years in reclaiming the inner domain, the spirit body level of the planet, we have been working extensively with the virtue and the value. This is why the core foundation of what we do inside the 13th Dimension Mystery School is focusing on this virtue piece. Because when we actually implement and apply the virtue, we can start to override this coding. Now, what is so important to realize is that this is so deep, right? This is not just a mimetic virus, right? A mind field virus, right? This is not just thoughts that we have and ways that we show up, right? It is fundamentally encoded into our skin, our bones, and our blood, right? So it is hardwired into our body and into our planet, which is why you can look out into several places in nature and see much of this distorted 6666 flower of life, golden mean geometry, because it has been embedded into the structure of this physiological experience that we're having here on Earth. And when we're working then, right, if you are aware of your bones are the crystalline structure of your body, and the bone marrow inside of your bones actually are the stem cells that trigger the growth of new blood. Now, if you've never heard me talk about blood before, I'm extremely fascinated with blood because of my experience as being a walk-in and how that required me to go into extreme blood deficiency to basically release the original soul that was in this body and rebuild a whole new stream of blood that was encoded for my soul to be able to come in. Because our blood is creating a radionic field of energy, every single drop of blood is sending out a signal, a message, a frequency. That frequency attracts your soul, and it is how your soul recognizes your body. So our blood and healthy blood and vital blood is so, so, so important. So having this program being to a place now where it has literally infiltrated our blood, it is how we've gotten to this place where we are not actually coming in as souls embodied. We are coming in through the victim-victimizer ego epigenetic overlay, right? This is the epigenetic overlay, right? This has been overlaid over the original source organic code. So people that are getting born through this program is put into our seed atom, which is our azure, and then it extends down into our tailbone. So any woman and man who are conceiving children into this world, this is how children are being born into this program. This is how this program has been so efficient, right? We can acknowledge that this experiment went it went and spiraled in a lot of directions that were not the original intention, which happens, right? It happens. And we can see that it has now survived for hundreds of billions of years because it is very efficient. And it is very efficient because it is directly put into our seed atom. And it then goes down through our body into our tailbone, which then allows for new life that is getting born through these systems to be born into this program. So this is why when we're coming into this world, we forget. We have no memory of what we are, or where we come from, where we've been. And we also have a disconnection from our soul. And we are plugged in immediately to this programming here. Now, the core of the planet, right? The azure of the planet, the seed atom of the planet, has been freed of this programming now, right? This was the mission of the 144, right? That has just recently completed. So the actual inner domains now is returning back into its Krystic organic intelligence. So what that is now doing is it's pushing this virus, if we want to call it that, to the surface. It is why we are seeing a huge externalized display of the 666 programming, which manifests here on Earth as the satanic programming, being portrayed on national huge stages, being shown so obviously, actually being imprinted into our educational system right now. I don't know if you've seen some of the new like after school programs that are being put in place into a lot of schools around at least the United States at this time, where there are satanic classrooms and things like that happening. And it's because this code is now being pushed out of the inner domains of the planet to the surface, where it gets cleared through the skin of the planet and us, our human bodies. It gets cleared through us. So our role as consciousness in form, awareness, the planetary consciousness in form in these bodies that are the skin body of the planet, we are going to be the ones purging this from our system. And it is likely going to continue to buoyantly display itself. And there are going to be people that actually gravitate towards this programming. And it's very important that we just stay in our heart around that, because, you know, no one is to blame here at this point. And if something has been embedded into the consciousness for hundreds of billions of years, like our human bodies cannot even conceive hundreds of billions of years, primarily because the race memory of humanity, of Earth, has been eradicated and has been shifted and altered to feed certain agendas, where we can't even really access the true story of what was going on this planet hundreds of billions of years ago. So these beings, right, us humans, life on Earth, including the plants have also been influenced with this coding, which is why certain plants will literally display it, and why we will actually start to see plant life, new plant life starting to emerge now that the inner core of the planet has shifted. We're starting to get some sun glare here. Let's adjust. So now that the inner core of the planet is back into running its organic code, right? We are going to start to see changes to the surface of the planet. We are going to see new plant life, new trees, ancient trees returning, new species. We've seen a lot of species going extinct, and those species in so many ways need to go extinct. They need to be completely reset from being in this coding for so very long. Now we're in a space where our focus is really going to be internally working to clear and free ourselves from these programs as well. And this is not a small task. You may think that some part of you is free from these programs. They're so sneaky because they are embedded into our bodies and into this planet, and they are being purged from our bodies, which means that as they are being purged from our bodies as well, they are going to become louder. And that is going to look like being triggered more, right? And that is going to look like at any time that in your mind you see someone and you judge them, or you say something cruel about them, right? You are victimizing that person, even if they never hear about it, even if they never know who you are. You have just assaulted them. You have just victimized them, right? You've just been the victimizer and they your victim, right? It's so subtle how that's showing up. So it will show up in those little moments internally in our internal narrative. Then it will show up in the larger patterns in the relationships that we have in our lives, especially the ones that we are still burning through the karma with those relationships. And the actions and behaviors and ways of moving in those relationships, when there is still karma that's being burned, will cycle back and forth between who's the victim and who's the victimizer. If he wants to say hello to everyone. Okay. So what we have found, what we have been guided towards as and really gifted to go through and free ourselves from this work is really directing our focus to the path of virtue and uncovering our unconscious value, right? There's a great gentleman on the planet. His name is Dr. Martini. He has some really amazing work on uncovering your unconscious values, right? Really understanding them and why this is so important is because we often are projecting our values onto someone else. And in doing so, we are often playing in this dynamic with them. The beautiful thing about the original code and letting this be our focus, because this can be, it is a trap, right? It is this loop that people continue to spiral back into. So when you focus on this, you often continue to just keep spiraling back into the karmic loops, instead of spiraling up and ascending out of them, right? When we focus and actually bring this into spectrum, right? Each of the 13, right? There are 13 core virtues. And these virtues go from the 13th dimension down to the first. So they are coming in through that source code with the 13th virtue being enlightenment. Right? It's all 12 dimensions below, activating all 12 of the human DNA Templar. So that virtue, each virtue, when we were going through these virtues in the 13th dimension mystery school in 2022, the amazing thing that was happening was that as the practices that were coming through for everyone, as we were applying them to our lives, we started to naturally realize where we were playing into these dynamics, where we were stuck in these loops, and how being stuck in these loops were actually stopping us from experiencing pleasure, joy, peace, prosperity, and abundance, success, being in service to the whole. Because anywhere that this loop is running in our field, it is going to ensure that we are playing in both sides of the paradigm, in both sides, right? So in some areas of our lives, we will be more conditioned to being the victim. A lot of times, for a lot of beings that are here to be in service to the whole and really be rising out of these cycles, right? This is where the false light, New Age movement came in and started to glorify these symbols, glorifying the flower of life, glorifying the Vesica Pisces, glorifying Metatron's cube, which is literally being stuck in this system, glorifying the very things that have been keeping this planet and so many other, this entire time matrices, right? And so many other systems cycling in this fallen coding, this inorganic coding, the cycle of de-evolution, right? Where we are just spinning backwards on our heels, the serpent biting its own tail, instead of actually doing a natural organic ascension process. So as we were really looking at these, as I was saying, we will have some areas of our life that will show up more in the victim. For a lot of people that are here to rise out of this, that victim space will show up as not feeling worthy, right? Not feeling worthy of being compensated for your gift, not feeling worthy of stepping into the service that you were here to offer, not feeling worthy of actually devoting yourself to even showing up for this work. And a lot of times that will be because, oh, I can't show up for this work. I can't prioritize this work, the deep inner spiritual work, because I don't have the money, victim, to actually do it. You can see how elaborately and just really perfectly this system has been designed to trap souls. And it needs to do that ultimately because when you are in a de-evolutionary cycle and you are no longer connected and plugged into the source organic code where you are getting that constant influx of source frequency coming through the planet and through you and your body, your consciousness, you end up being in these death cycles, right? And in a death cycle, death is not an organic process. That is an inorganic process. So when we are in these death cycles, we are in the evolutionary domains that require souls to be stuck in them so that they can be food to continue to fuel the agenda. Then there will be other areas of people's lives where they will show up more as the victimizer, right? As the abuser, right? And it doesn't have to be like overt, obvious abuse. It can be as simple as those moments when you're scrolling social media and you read something and you think, oh, this person is, they're whatever, whatever judgments or hate or shame or guilt or blame that is projected onto that person who becomes your victim in that moment, that is a moment where you're being a victimizer, right? And there is so much hate happening in the world. There is so much of an inability to see each other in equality and unity, to see and truly have compassion for the fact that all of life in this domain has been in this. We've all been in this. We've all been playing these games out. Some people and groups and families, right? I'm talking about more extraterrestrial families, have played out certain narratives more strongly as the victimizers and have conquered entire planets or entire countries, right? And a lot of beings are really running in this victim, right? As a primary functioning of their lives. And that is the I am not worthy program. So this is all, as you said, now coming to the surface. If you did not watch my video right before this one on the latest planetary updates and why there is so much chaos happening, I will link that below. That is a really great video to go watch and understand why we have so much chaos, so much of this stuff blatantly, obviously being pushed to the surface now. As things come to the surface, us, the human skin of the planet, it is our responsibility to process it. And it gets unconsciously processed through this cycle because this is what is hardwired into the unconscious, into the bones, into the blood, in the skin of your body. So in order to actually release and clear and spiral out of this patterning here, you have to truly choose and be so devoted to tapping into your conscious, to moving into a space of soul integration, right? Where you are becoming aware of this epigenetic overlay. And you are choosing to have and hold in your heart's compassion for everything that has taken place on this planet and getting to that space where you can reach neutrality with it all. And I mean it all the weird shit that's been happening. Freedom from this means neutrality with it all. One little strategy that I can share is any archetype that you play into one of these roles with. A great example for a lot of people that are going to be potentially watching this, that are maybe aware now at this point of the false lights of the new age, aware that these symbols are not what the new age has said they are, and are feeling this disconnection in your body, right? One thing that is often a pattern or a trait is to avoid certain types of people. And in doing so, ultimately, it's because those people are not awake, or they're not conscious, or they're not aware, or they're living in ways that are really ungrounded and unconscious, and there's judgment in every single one of those statements, right? A lot of times these are people that, let's say, will be on certain types of television programs, right? Reality TV is a really great way to actually face off with your victim-victimizer programming. Because if there is an archetype that you're judging, maybe it is the fallen prostitute archetype, right? Or it is like some of the archetypes that when they go into fall zones, they end up consuming a ton of alcohol and drugs and numbing and like being promiscuous and all these different things. And our culture has glamorized some of those fallen archetypes in our television shows. So the agenda has been, oh, I need to stay away from those things because those people aren't awake and aware. And in that is innately victimizing these beings. So actually exposing yourself to these different types of shows with different types of people that you innately are realizing, whoa, I've been judging this type of person, I've been judging them, and not having compassion in my heart, and therefore continuing to keep myself in this spiral. Exposing yourself in these spaces through television or through podcasts or through books or through YouTube videos or whatever it is, right? You don't have to physiologically go and find them. This is the beautiful thing about this age that we're in, where you can connect with all different types of people in a split second on the internet. Go and find where they are and actually let yourself be in a shared space where you're watching them or reading them or listening to them and working through all of those judgments, working through all of those layers of this coding, purging it from your body, and getting to a space where you can have and hold deep and profound compassion for their experience, and where you can find neutrality within what they're experiencing. And it's likely that there are going to be many different types of shows and podcasts and books that you can go and start to do this with and work through some of these automatic unconscious ways that this program is showing up in all of our lives. And I do this personally myself, this practice, to anytime there's a new like group or archetype or personality that I have some judgment towards, or have some resistance towards, or have some maybe even more negative thought patterns towards. Like, I will find where I can consume content that they are in, and I will work through that, because I recognize in that moment that this pattern is what's playing out through me. That's one way that you can begin applying this immediately right now, and start to bring more and more and more of the unconscious ways that this shows up to the surface, right? This work here is what I call the lightning path, because it is one of the fastest and most efficient ways of becoming aware of how this shows up in your life. And you can burn through a tremendous amount of the karma and the distortions and the coding of this program very quickly and efficiently when you really truly start to unpack the unconscious values that are driving you forward, and work with and training to and clearing through the virtues. And this is the practice that we focus on devotionally throughout an entire year together inside of the 13th Dimension Mystery School, because we are truly working on supporting each other through this work and having the spaces where we can become aware of this. The beautiful thing about doing it in a community with other people happening inside of the mystery school together is that when one person has an aha about a way that this pattern has been showing up in their lives, and they share, whoa, look at this breakthrough that this virtue has allowed me to see. And wow, I see how this is actually formulating and stopping me from stepping into my power in my work, or in claiming what I'm actually deserving here in this world as far as health and love and resources and opportunities. And they share that and they have that breakthrough. That breakthrough is amplified through there being a group of people holding space for that, because when 2 or more gathered, the energy is amplified. When you have 30 people gathered, the energy is even more amplified. So we can burn through things so much faster together, which is why some soul level, soul family karmas can only be burned through together. And in that moment, when that seemingly one person is having this breakthrough and is sharing about it in the group, everyone else will start having, whoa, start being able to track, whoa, I see how this is over here and showing up in my hologram as well. And whoa, I'm still playing into this here. And wow, this is resonating. Whoa, let me unpack this in my own life. And then we all get to spiral up together as a result. So it is one of the most profound, and why it is just so important right now to really understand what is going on both internally, where the planet is at in her inner core, and why this stuff is pushing to the surface, and then to have a very clear path forward and a community space that, I was really guided to open this for this moment right now. And we've already had a year of tremendous success of people going through this journey. And, over 65% of people that were in it in 2022 have already recommitted to being in the 13th dimension again with us. That begins March 3rd of 2023 and goes through March of 2024. Because what we achieve, what we experience, what we actualize internally through really devoting ourselves to this path of virtue and value, to freeing ourselves from these victim-victimizer conditioning and programming and purging through that karma, is monumental. Not only for what's happening inside of ourselves, feeling more love, feeling more peace, feeling more joy and hope and optimism for the future, it actually trickles out. And we've seen people transform their lives, move to new locations, start new jobs, clear up long-standing health things without doing anything else except for focusing on the internal work, bringing their life into a cohesive resonance with the true organic coding of their higher dimensional nature, and freeing themselves from this cycle. If there are any questions surrounding this, I'm going to put my email address in the description of this video. Please feel free to email me or send me a message and connect, because I'm an open book to having a discussion around any of this. And if you are interested in coming in and exploring what we're doing inside the 13th dimension, there are a couple different paths that you can come into this community through. One is through the path of remembrance, which is the actual mystery school element where we are learning and growing and excavating this programming and stepping into our organic intelligence and stepping into our, really it's the path of soul initiation. And you are initiating that the moment you show up and say yes and make that commitment and devotion to the path of virtue, virtuous leadership, which is what the earth is literally prioritizing now. Those that truly choose to excavate this program and step into this higher acidic frequency, right? The 7th gene here, virtuous leadership. the earth is going to monumentously be rewarding those people and inviting them into higher levels of service from this moment moving forward, because this is where the core of the earth is now at. She is freed from this, and now we are pushing it out through our skin and releasing it and purging it from this planet, which means it's going to get louder and louder in our external reality, and more of us are going to need to be here, present, awake, carrying this code, soul and body, going through this initiation to help and support the rest of our family members here, humanity, our human family, through this incredibly, at times, difficult initiation and rite of passage of becoming free from this epigenetic overlay, reclaiming this pure code. Okay, so I'll drop those links below. And if you are interested at all in having a conversation before we begin March 3rd, again, just send me an email. Be sure you look at the website before you email so that you have a general sense of what's happening in the space before reaching out to me. There's also some really amazing things that I put there, and I'm going to maybe pop up some images right now, because I talked about how this coding is influencing our blood. So the technology that we're working with inside of the 13th dimension is an inner technology. It is these Krystic ordination ceremonies or activations that ultimately we have proven now with live blood cell technology that they directly go in and immediately start to make changes in the blood where this program is encoded. And you can see right here a before and after of just one person that's gone through just one of these ordinations. And you can see the difference before and after of how this has changed fundamentally in their blood. So again, that link to the 13th dimension is below in the comments. You can join us anytime before March 3rd when we begin, and then we do close it to keep it an intimate container to grow together. And also we keep these groups smaller because there is a lot of one-on-one voice notes and support that happens through that space. And I want to make sure that I have a great sized group where I can be really hands-on with everyone that's in this space to the best of my ability. So if you are resonating with this and you are feeling really pulled to the 13th dimension, like, go check it out immediately and really feel into if this is the best space for you to be in and rise. And if you feel that I'm someone who is in integrity with these words and with this work to support you on your journey in this path, because that is really truly what's most important. I don't believe in hiring people that are triggering to you. I believe in hiring people that feel like home and are holding something and are ushering us into something that feels like we are ready for truly. So again, my name is Ahomna Maya. For those of you who are not familiar with my work, go check out some of my other videos and explore what's happening here. If you have not already, subscribe to my YouTube channel, be sure to do so. And if you will support by giving this video a heart, little thumbs up, dropping some comments below, and really supporting this wisdom and getting into the algorithm and allowing this type of content to get prioritized in the field, because this is really, really the deep work that our souls, the earth, humanity is longing for. So any support that you can give in supporting this video today is truly deeply appreciated. Sending you all lots of love. I hope to see you inside the 13th dimension this year or some other time in the future. That being said, until we meet again, bye friends.